Hello, my name is Colleen Pinyan, and welcome to Confessions of a Facilitator: Secrets to Designing Stellar PD. I'd love for you to follow along with me today by going to this bit.ly, https://bit.ly/bold PD24, or if you'd rather, you can just scan that QR code and get there. Here's a look at some of the digital learning competencies that this course is aligned to. If you need more information on that, you can reach out to me. I have my email at the end of the presentation. Today, this session is going to empower educators to design and host on-site professional development courses that meet the unique needs of their stakeholders. When you finish this course, you're going to have the tools and the resources to design those courses that'll be narrowly tailored to what your staff members need to make sure that students achieve their learning outcome. Let's face it, bad PD, what can be worse for educators? We've all been there, bored out of our minds, sitting and getting there's not enough coffee or Coca-Cola, Pepsi products to get us through. I want you to think about for a minute your worst PD experience. Pause, think about it for about a minute, and then we'll come back and reflect on that. Welcome back. I think my worst PD experience was a time when I had to do a 2-day training for a mental health support certification that I needed for my elementary school, to serve a role in my elementary school. And it was 2 straight days of someone reading word for word from a PowerPoint. I don't think there's many things worse than that. They're not going off the PowerPoint, not elaborating on the PowerPoint, reading straight from the PowerPoint. That is painful. I'm sure you can probably relate to that in your own PD experience. Today, however, you are not going to be one of those people that puts on that kind of PD. We are going to say goodbye to boring, unengaging PD. After today, you're going to have the tools you need to design engaging PD that meets the needs of your staff. We're going to discover an instructional design principles necessary to create meaningful, engaging PD. You're going to hear about some hard lessons I learned on my PD design journey, and we're going to leverage all that knowledge to set SMART goals for you to design PD for your staff. Before we go on, I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself and why I'm here delivering this session on professional development. I have 13 years experience as a school library media coordinator in the schools, in public schools. I've been in elementary and I've been in the high school setting. I also recently completed my master's in education in instructional technology, where we spent a lot of time talking about instructional design. So I've learned things in the classroom and out of the classroom. I've also designed and hosted on-site professional development for my staff at Brooks Global Studies and at Northwest High School. And I will say this, that the PD that I've designed more recently is much better than what I designed for my colleagues at Brooks Global Studies, because I discovered the secret sauce. I discovered and unlocked the key to building a great professional development house for your staff. And we're going to be using that house metaphor a lot today. The firm foundation you're going to need is ADDIE. And I'm not talking about a person's name. I'm talking about an instructional design framework. If you use ADDIE to build your professional development house for your staff, you are going to be successful. And you may be saying, lady, what on earth is ADDIE? Let me tell you, ADDIE is an instructional design framework designed back in the World War II era to help jumpstart the training process. At that time, there was a lot of new technology available, and military had to train people quickly. And so Joe Harless designed ADDIE to help do that. Fast forward 80 years later, people are still using Addy in a variety of settings. I don't think we talk about Addy as much as we should in the K-12 setting, but we need to, because every time we're designing a lesson, we're instructional designers. So we need to think about this framework. Starts with analysis. This is where we're going to choose the kind of house we want to live in. Do we need a condo or do we need a 3-bedroom ranch? What kind of design? We're going to get our blueprint going. Development. That's the interior design part of it, where we make it look pretty. Implementation. That's the construction phase. Evaluation. We're going to bring in the inspector to take a look at our house to make it sure it is good for living. And throughout this whole time, the thing that we've got to make sure we do over and over again at every stage is ongoing assessment. We have to be self-aware. We have to be constantly asking ourselves, what can I do to make this better? Let's start with analysis. Think of analysis as when you are going house shopping and you're trying to think of the house that best meets your family's or your lifestyle needs. Like I said, it could be a condo. You may need a garden style home. You might need a house that has 2 bedrooms. We moved into a new house about 13 years ago. Same time I actually decided to go to be a school librarian. And one of the things, we had a teenager and an almost teenager, and we needed more living space. So we were looking for a house that we were able to spread everybody out a little bit. That's what you need to think about in the analysis phase. What kind of professional development is going to best suit my learners? How are we going to meet my learners' needs so that they can meet their learning outcomes? We're going to spend a few minutes here drilling down and thinking about our learners, our staff. You know, in education, we have really figured out, most of us have anyway, overwhelming majority, of how to do pedagogy. We know how to teach kids. We know the things that we're supposed to do for kids. We don't think a lot about andragogy. What is that? That's adult learning. How do we teach adults? And that is very different than teaching students. So I'd love for you to take a minute, pause the recording, and choose one of these resources where you can learn more about andragogy. I've got 2 videos, one in the top left corner, one in the bottom right corner, if you prefer that, if that's your learning style. Or I've got 2 quick articles that you can read. So take a minute, take a look at those, and then we'll come back on the other side. So what did you learn? What did you discover? I think my big takeaways from andragogy is that adults have to have buy-in. They need to know why they're there and how is it going to help them. They also need to have, and I think this can apply to pet students too, young people too, is that they really need to have the opportunity to be self-directed. They need the opportunity to be able to choose their own PD that works for them. It also has to be collaborative, where they're working together with other teachers, working together with other people in their departments, in their grade level, to engage in the content. And finally, it must be problem-centered. Like I said a little bit before, they want to know why they're there. And if you can identify ahead of time problems that your learners have, and I'm not think problems they want to solve in their classroom. Like, man, I really need to work on my class management. Man, I'm really having a hard time getting these students to have a longer attention span. What can I do about that? Man, I'm having a really hard time. All those kind of things. Think about those problems. That's where there's going to be buy-in for andragogy for adult learners. Here's for each of these sessions as we go through the framework. I'm going to be, as I promised in the course description, I'm going to be sharing with you some lessons that I've learned the hard way. I've already paid the tuition for these lessons so that you don't have to. As I said before, I've designed PD for two groups of teachers. First at my elementary school, Brooks Global Studies, and now for my high school, Northwest High School. And both of these are here in Guilford County Schools. One of the things that teachers said at Brooks Global Studies that they wanted help with for integrating technology into their classrooms was resources to help add the global lens, a global layer to their instruction. We were a global studies magnet school. So that was something that was hard for teachers. You're not finding all those resources. So that's what I did. I found resources for them where they were able to take a regular lesson and funnel it through a global filter. That made the PD that we had much more meaningful. And they were able to because they were able to isolate and see how it applied to a certain problem that they had. Northwest, and actually at Brooks, I figured that out pretty quickly. I solved that. Northwest had a different problem. So one of the reasons people take professional development, other than someone from the district telling them, is because they need credit for their renewal cycle. So when I came to Northwest, I arrived 5 weeks before the pandemic started and was trying to figure out, how do I lead people that I barely know? As our first full year back after the pandemic, I tried to do a on-site professional development. I had 3 people show up. And I was just dumbfounded. I'm like, why aren't more people wanting to do this? Don't people want to learn how to integrate technology? Blah, blah, blah. Then I realized the reason why people weren't signing up was because they did not need the credit. During the pandemic, at the start of the pandemic, when we first hit lockdown, remote learning time period, our district made it easy for us to earn digital learning competencies credit and lots of other PD credit, CEU credit for learning how to use Teams, for learning how to use Canvas, all these different learning platforms. So teachers did not need the CEUs. Fast forward 4 years to the 23-24 school year. I decided to try it again because our CF said, people are asking for this. Can you do it? And I'm like, sure, I'll try again. Didn't know what to expect, but I had 25 people sign up for this course and they stuck with it all year long because they all had the problem. They needed the credit. That's not a great reason for people to want to take the class, but I used it to my advantage and was able to try to get identify some things that I saw were issues, like trying to find meaningful ways to better ways to engage students in the classroom, getting them more involved. Another problem that we had surface is that our school received Promethean panels mid-year this year. I had to tweak it because people had a problem now. They need to know how to use the Promethean panels. So I had to come up with professional development training to onboard them, to scaffold my teachers to make sure they could easily use those Promethean panels. So I hope that makes sense, that when you're talking about problems and learning outcomes, whoops, went too far, my bad. That's the thing you've got to do for these teachers, that you have to make sure they can see how it taps into something they need. And then they'll show up and they will participate and they'll engage and have fun. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. I would like for you to take a minute, use the think sheet that is provided on the NCBOLD website. We have an easy way for you to get that, or you can just get out a piece of paper and write down your instructions. Think about, in the analysis phase, what are some problems or learning outcomes that you see that your school might need? Take a couple minutes to do that, and then come back and join me in a minute. Welcome back. Are you ready to hit the design phase? I hope so. The design phase is when we build our blueprint. That's why we have the blueprint background. This is like in building a house. You've decided what kind of house you need. Now you have to do the design. You have to create your blueprint. When you're doing this, I think you need to think about 4 big things. What content do you want to discover? How are they going to discover? the assessments, how they're going to test, and how are you going to test or evaluate what they've learned? What instructional strategies and activities are you going to use? What format are you going to use? Those are all things you've got to think about in this time. Content, assessment, instructional strategies and activities, and the format. I like this phase. I like thinking about how we're going to do this, what activities we're going to use. So one of the things that I had to do is instructional strategies I had to do is to make sure that my teachers understood clearly how the lessons were going, how the sessions were going to solve problems that they had in the classroom. When I started this PD, this was a year-long PD, and when I first started it, I had not learned about andragogy. And so I kind of probably mislabeled the first things, and the feedback I got from teachers was, I don't know how this is going to be relevant to me. And I was like, oh dear, how am I going to fix this? And then I learned about andragogy. So I began reframing my lessons is how you can leverage Canva to showcase your data, how you can build a Google site to house student portfolios or to share resources. So then they were able to, that was my instructional strategy, so that they could easily see how the instructional technology that we were learning about was going to apply to them in their classroom. The other strategy I had was that I made sure that I demonstrated it and gave them time to practice it. Now, we had a little bit, the formatting was a little bit of a problem. We were doing this PD before school, and our school day for high schools in Guilford County, we don't have to open our doors, be in our classrooms to 9 o'clock. So and then we're not done to 4:30. People would much rather do things before school. So the format I had was we were trying to do it from 8:15 to 9 o'clock. That was not enough time. The feedback I received at the end was that's not enough time. So I would think when you're thinking about your format, you need to make sure you have time where they're going to have plenty of time to practice and ask questions and go ahead and figure out a way they can integrate that tool into a lesson to use in the foreseeable future. So next year, this coming school year, I met with my new principal yesterday, and we're going to have the opportunity for teachers to do, the format is going to be choose your own adventure, and they will have to complete 4 of 6 options. And we will be doing it on work days where I'll have 90-minute blocks for them to play, to learn about something and then play with it. Giving them time is important. Table time reflection. I'd love for you to think about a minute now is what kind of format might work in your school? What kind of content do they need? Now, I will add, I forgot to mention this for content. I really wanted to find instructional technology tools for them to integrate in their instruction that were going to be easy to do, that were going to be free, and that were going to be ways to engage students. Like, how are we going to increase our student engagement? So that's something for you to think about now. So take a couple of minutes, take some notes, pause the video, and when you're done, join me, and we'll go on to development. Welcome back. I hope you had a productive reflection time. And here I'm gonna pause for a second, and I really hope you are taking time to pause the video and think about these things. If you just plow through this and you don't take time to reflect, you're not going to get as much out of this as you would otherwise. Because the whole point of this is for you to be developing the skills, developing a mindset to take back to your stakeholders, your educators. All right, development. This is another fun part. This is the interior design. You get to pick out the paint. You get to pick out the flooring. You get to pick out your cabinets. All that great stuff that goes into building a house. Development. What kind of bells and whistles are we going to use? What kind of videos are we going to use? How are we going to organize this? You can see with my professional development today, we have a format. We talk about something. I give you lessons I've learned, and there's a reflection time. That's what we do there. That's my organization. Feedback. As you're developing, you need to talk to your colleagues. Run things by them. Say, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? When you're developing, you have got to give them time to practice. Pinyan's pointers about this. Whoops, I went too far. Pinyan's pointers. So here's a couple things I'm going to say about this. I cannot emphasize enough that they need to have practice opportunity. That's why we're expanding it to go longer. I'm going to make sure we have things where they get to actually, everybody is doing it. They have to do it, sitting and getting. I attended PD recently where it was 10 AI tools. And it was just bam, 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 bam. These are the tools. We were not given any time to explore the tools, not given a time to look at it. Compare that to a session where I went to where we only used learned about 2 tools that we were given time and many tasks to do in those tools. I highly recommend doing that. It's so much better to cover less ground, giving them less tools and more time to play. I introduced my staff to Magic School AI at the beginning of the year, and it gave everybody something to do. I said, I want you to do this now. They loved it. Teaching them how to work smarter, not harder. We had the time to practice. That's something that's really important in Gagne's 9 steps for instruction. Eliciting practice, getting that muscle memory in there. The other thing you need to think about with development is feedback. Like I mentioned before, we got Promethean panels mid-year. So I had to kind of take a step back, restructure my on-site PD, and add in the whole 2 units on Promethean panels. Well, I was planning to do 2 units on 2 months of Promethean panel lessons. And then I talked to one of my colleagues and I said, what do people need to learn about Promethean panels after the first month? And he said, Colleen, we don't need to learn anything else new right now. We just need time to piddle with it. We need time to dabble. Don't give us anything else right now. And I took that feedback and we did something completely different. I should mention that when I did the on-site PD at Northwest, the format was, forgot to mention this, sorry about that, that it was monthly PD and they had to attend 4 of the 6 sessions to get credit. One of the reasons I did that is because it's choice, gives them choice. And it does not, it was also for my convenience that I did not have to do makeup sessions. If you don't have to attend all of them, then I'm not going to be doing extra makeup sessions for you, because I really, in my job, in my role as one media coordinator for 2,000 people, do not have time to do that. So that was important. Sorry, I forgot to mention that earlier, but that can kind of go to the organizational part of development. So each month we covered different topics. Like one month we talked about Canva. One month we talked about building Google Sites. One month we did Promethean panels. 1 month we talked about ways you can use assessment tools. That's just some general ideas there. But those are some pointers about development. Getting that feedback, asking your colleagues, having a couple of trusted colleagues to run things by is essential. Take a minute for your reflection time and think about what you would like to do, and then how this could work in your schools, the design process, the development process. And then we are going to turn to the house construction implementation. I'll see you back in a minute. Welcome back. I know you paused the video this time. I feel it from here in the recording studio that you actually paused that video. Implementation is when we get out the hammer and the nails and we build this thing. This is making sure we have a sound structure. The 3 things you need to do to make this happen: prep the space, prep the learner, prep the instructor. If someone other than you is going to be instructing, you need to make sure you give them the tools to do what they need to do. If you need to make sure you reach out to your learners to say, hey, before you come to this session, I need you to create a login, create an account on Canva. Make sure you prep your space. Get your space ready. My big learner takeaway from this is there are things that definite missteps that I made. One of the things that I did wrong was a scheduling issue for what day we were going to have our PD. I scheduled it for Wednesday morning. I did not consider how essential it was for me to have time the day before to prep the space. On Tuesdays, and we have a learning hub at our school that runs to 6 o'clock. I'm not there to 6 o'clock. I cannot prep the space. So do you know what happened at 8 o'clock? I'm running around like a crazy woman before 8:15 trying to set up. My principal provided food. If you can get your principal to provide food, highly recommended. It gets them in the door, or at least coffee or tea. I was running around trying to set up the food. I was trying to get my Promethean board logged in. I was trying to do all those things. And that made me frazzled before I even welcomed my teachers. I couldn't even welcome them because I was trying to set up the space. So if I were to do another morning session, I would make sure I did it on a Thursday or a Friday morning when I did not have Learning Hub at my school. That's something you've got to think about ahead of time. So learn from my mistake there. The other thing I would make sure you do is send out those emails asking them to create their login information, create their accounts if you're going to use tools. Will they read the email? Will they follow the instructions? Maybe half of them will, and that'll make it the time go by a lot faster. Take a minute and think about a day, a time that would be easy for you to use your space for PD. What is a day that would work for you? What is a work day that would work for you? When you will have plenty of time to set up your space, to put out your papers, to have everything organized so that you are not frazzled before you start teaching. I'll see you in a minute. Welcome back. Did you figure out that day that would work for you? I hope so. Everybody's got one. Finally, it's the evaluation. It's time to get that building inspector in to make sure that we have a sound PD. Evaluation is something that kind of goes hand in hand with as you are presenting, hand in hand with implementation. You are doing, as we've talked about, you're always assessing, you're always getting feedback, you're always looking at things each session. There are a couple different ways, just as in the classroom, that we can do feedback. We can do informal feedback, formal feedback. We can do summative assessments and formative assessments. So I did a couple things. How I did this on my PD was that I was able to get some feedback at the end of the session. When I was at Brooks Global Studies, we tweaked the format. I did this over 2 years. We learned after school didn't work, so they wanted to do it on a Saturday. So I only did 2 Saturdays. We did 2 different Saturdays where they got the full credit in. And I was overzealous and was trying to jam things in. After the first Saturday, my principal said to me, and this is informal feedback, but it was summative. Summative. You got to slow it down. You can only do 1 session, let them practice. 1 session, let them practice. That was great feedback. This for Northwest, I had a couple of different feedbacks, assessments. I had informal assessment where I would ask and listen to people and say, hey, what do you need? How can I do this better? And there was a math teacher that was really helpful. After the first thing, he's like, this is great stuff. I love it. But I'll tell you what, in math with our pacing guide, it is really hard for us to do some of these things. So when I started creating the other things, what I started looking at other sessions and planning those out, designing that instruction, what he said clicked with what I learned about andragogy. They have problems. His problem was they needed things that they could do without worrying about their pacing guides. So that's how I came up with Canva infographics and Google Sites. And also the Promethean, how we did tailor the Promethean instruction. Each week we would do a formative assessment. We would have people try things. Problem was we didn't always have enough time, which is why I'm tweaking it for next year. I also did two summative things. One, everybody to get full credit for this either had to for this course at Northwest, either had to collaborate with me and integrate one of the instructional technology tools into a lesson. So for example, for that, I had a couple teachers book time with me to do a Canva timeline for a world history class. And a sports marketing teacher had me help her class build a Google site, and also to do Canva with her sports marketing one to create flyers for their fantasy football leagues. She got bonus points because we did two collaborations. Shout out to Brenda Cullinan. But so that was one way they did that. The other thing that they could do is if they didn't do that, for our last session, it was show and tell. They had to create a Google slide talking about how they integrated one of their tools, and they had to share it with the class. It was so much fun having 25 teachers talk about all the different tools that they learned about this year and which one resonated with them. Everybody did something except for one person, and her feedback was for me, it's like, I've been too scared to do much. I don't know what to do. I said, lady, we got to at least get you onto your Promethean panel. So we were able to go do that one day. So it's a lesson that some people need scaffolding and need a little bit more support, and we provide that for them. But everyone else was able to create those amazing Google slides where they showcased what they learned. That was really exciting to see. And I also created a feedback. I created a Google form for them to provide feedback for me. That is scary. It is scary to get feedback from your teachers, to see if you're good at what you do. But I will tell you, I was able to take that constructive feedback, and use it to design better PD next year. And the great news is they all want to do it again next year. Even though we no longer have to have digital learning competencies credit, they want to use just get it for regular credit, and have asked our CF to make that work. So I want you to think about how you might assess evaluate whether your PD is working at your school. If we were together, what we would be doing is breaking down into small groups and with different school levels, and talk about ways that we could use build AADDI in the classroom. We would also talk about launching your own AADDI journey by creating a SMART goal. Here's the QR code about SMART goal. I have a SMART goal think sheet that you can use to build your PD. So you can pause the video and work on that right now. And we're close to the end, or you can finish it out and do that. But that's the way that you can do that. My final Pinyan pointer for today is, in a world of popsicle sticks, be a pipe cleaner. And you're like, lady, you have gone off the deep end. What do you mean? Okay, I want you to think about this. When you break a popsicle stick, and if I was with you, I would break a popsicle stick. If you have a craft stick or popsicle stick in your house, break one. You know what happens? It's splintery, it's pointy. It's like a porcupine. When you break a popsicle stick, no one wants to be around you. But a pipe cleaner can bend and mold and shape regardless of the setting. And you're not going to poke or prod anybody. So the point is, you want to be flexible. You want to be a pipe cleaner. You want to be able to be able to bend and mold and adapt rather than break, and be like a porcupine and prickly and salty. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not salty sometimes. Heaven knows the kids know that. But that is my final Pinyan's pointer of the day. Be a pipe cleaner. Be flexible. Adapt. The whole thing with the Promethean panels dropping in the middle of the year, and I had to think about how to recreate my lessons and get all these staff to learn how to do Promethean panels, even the people that hadn't signed up for the course, I had to be flexible. I had to figure it out because I needed to make sure they used those Promethean panels. If I was salty and prickly, they would not have been happy, and those panels would be sitting there unused, and students would have lost out. If you want to talk about some ideas that you have for launching your own Addie journey, email me. I'm at pinyan@gcsnc.com, or you can follow me on X or Instagram. Thank you for joining me today. I enjoyed having you here online, and I look forward to hearing from you.